So Tulsi Gabbard went on Morning Joe, which is basically the epicenter of establishment politics, and they proceeded to pelt her with questions about Assad and be incredibly condescending towards her. So let's watch, and then I'll explain why this is so out of bounds.
Friends,
do you think Assad is our enemy?
If we're serious about the pursuit of peace.
Do you think Assad is our enemy?
Assad is not the enemy of the United States because Syria does not pose a direct threat to the United States.
What do you say to Democratic voters who watched you go over there, and what do you say to military members who have been deployed repeatedly in Syria, pushing back against Assad?
People who have been deployed to Syria have been there focused on their mission, which has been to defeat ISIS. Our troops have not gone to Syria to wage yet another costly, destructive regime change war. And many troops I hear from express frustration at the fact that our country continues to wage senseless, costly regime change wars, followed by nation-building missions, leading to situations like we see in Afghanistan. So many examples of our troops being deployed, their lives put on the line, without understanding what the clear mission or objective is and how that mission actually serves the security of the American people in the United States.
Which I think a lot of Americans would agree with you there. But again, going back to Assad, Assad is not an enemy. Is he an adversary of the United States?
We have to look to who poses a threat to the United States and the American people.
I understand that, but there are a lot of people who don't pose a direct military threat to the United States who consider themselves to be adversaries of the United States. Vladimir Putin poses or considers America to be an enemy. We consider Russia to be an adversary. I'm just asking, do you consider Assad to be an adversary of the United States?
When I look at whether it's Syria or Turkey or Russia or China or other countries in the world, I look at what are their interests and are their interests counter to our interests.
So what would you say he is to the United States? If you cannot say that he's an adversary or an enemy, what is Assad to the U.S.? What is the word?
You can describe it however you want to describe it.
I want to know how you describe it.
My point is that whether it is Syria or any of these other countries, we need to look at how their interests are counter to or aligned with ours.
Are Assad's interests aligned with ours?
What are Assad's interests?
Assad seems interested in the slaughter primarily of his own people, in part. I mean, how does that line up? Survival, yeah.
Say bad things about the official baddie right now, please. Why won't you do it? Why won't you say bad things about the official baddie? I need you to say bad things about the official baddie. Why aren't you saying bad things about the official baddie? Listen, guys, this is propaganda. That's what it is. Now, don't get me wrong. Is Assad a terrible guy? Yes. Has Tulsi Gabbard even admitted that Assad is, and I quote, a brutal dictator? Yes, her words. Assad is a, quote, brutal dictator. But why are they begging for her to continue to condemn Assad, talk about how evil he is, talk about how wrong he is? It's very simple. We have recent historical examples you can go to. What happened in 2002 in the lead up to the Iraq War? All you heard was how evil Saddam Hussein is, how wrong Saddam Hussein is, how bad Saddam Hussein is. What happened in the lead up to Libya? All you heard about was how evil Gaddafi is, how wrong Gaddafi is, how terrible Gaddafi is. Honestly, even Obama, when he said the first time he ran for president, I will talk to Iran, quote, without preconditions, he said. Across the board. Corporate Democrats, Republicans, all, you're naive, you're stupid, you're dumb, you can't do that, why would you do that? They smeared him as a dictator lover simply for saying he would talk to our enemies without preconditions. Now, what do they say about Tulsi Gabbard today? Dictator lover. So this is how you build propaganda up for a war. You get the consensus to be where everybody has to nod in approval, has to speak the mantras all at the same time. Oh, yes, he's so evil, he's so wrong, he's so bad. This way, you build the logic up so it's ironclad, so that when they say, all right, we're going to topple them, you're not allowed to say no. You're not, because then what do they say to you? Oh, why would you defend a dictator? You dictator lover, you don't care about human rights. When the reality is what? Nothing could be further from the truth. For fuck's sake, when Saddam was at the height of his atrocities against the Kurds, he was doing it with U.S. money and U.S. weapons and U.S. backing as our ally. Look at what we're doing right this second in Yemen. We're backing Saudi Arabia, a dictatorial theocracy. We're backing them as they slaughter women and children in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, and starve the fucking country to death. So people, it's so easy to mislead people and to make them think that we give a shit at all about morality. For fuck's sake, guys, we back 73% of the world's dictatorships. If we cared about morality and we cared about human rights, step one would be, don't prop up 73% of the world's dictatorships. But instead, we go to one of the bad guys who we don't actively support, and we focus on that guy because we're trying to build the logic for regime change. And by the way, we're literally on both sides of this conflict, let's be clear. Because it's a fact, we covered the study, that 60%, and this is as of like 3 or 4 years ago, it might even be more now, 60% of the rebels are jihadists. So more than half of the rebels are jihadists, but the U.S. wants Assad gone, but also in theory, of course, we want to kill ISIS and Al-Qaeda, so what do? I don't know. Arm both sides of the war. Have Pentagon-backed rebels fighting CIA-backed rebels, which is what's happening, which the LA Times reported on a few years back, how we're literally on both sides of the war. So just understand what this is. It doesn't matter. She could go out there and condemn Assad till the fucking cows come home, and she would still be smeared. Why? Because ultimately her position is, let's not do any more regime change wars. And that's unacceptable. You have to always be in favor of regime change wars. You have to always use human rights as the facade to then prop up U.S. puppet dictators to serve our corporate interests. Listen, people, no matter how much you talk about it, people really do struggle with this point. But the reality is, we don't care about human rights. We don't care about altruism. We don't care about justice. What we do around the world is 100% for power, domination, control of markets, natural resources. Think of the world as a geopolitical chessboard, and it's us versus Russia, and we're always constantly jockeying for position to try to have more power, more control, more domination, and to control markets. So if you ever stop looking at international affairs through that prism, you're wrong. You're wrong, because that's the lens that everybody else is viewing it through. That's the lens that the people in power are viewing it through. So when you have a voice step up that says, no, I'm going to fucking plant a flag and I'm the anti-war person, they are going to get smeared till the cows come home. And it's the same playbook, just like I said. In 2002, George Galloway went to visit Saddam Hussein. Why? Because he loved Saddam Hussein? No, because he didn't want fucking war. And he was smeared, dictator lover. To this day, he's smeared as a dictator lover because he tried to stop war, and he was right to try to stop the war. So they said dictator lover for Saddam Hussein in 2002. They said it for Gaddafi in whatever year that was, maybe 2009. Now they're saying it for Assad. Like I said, they said it for Obama with the Iran negotiations. And that's always going to be the playbook. You're always sympathetic to a dictator because you believe as a matter of principle, the U.S. shouldn't violate international law willy-nilly. And that's Tulsi's position. Hey, we shouldn't have the right to just go around and topple foreign governments and meddle in these countries. We don't have the right to do that. She's smeared as the extremist one. Look at her answer to the question. Hey, would you say Assad is an enemy of the United States? She goes, no, he's not an enemy. He hasn't posed a direct threat to us. That is exactly the correct answer. How can anybody say that's not the right answer? What would make somebody an enemy? Let me ask you, what would make somebody an enemy of the United States? Oh, if they want to attack us. That's right. Yes, that's what makes an enemy. It doesn't make him an enemy if they're just a bad guy, bad leader, even a dictator. Like I said, we back 73% of the world's dictatorships. So that's the correct answer, and she's smeared for it. She's smeared for it. And by the way, none of those idiots on the panel have any idea that 60% of the rebels are jihadists. None of them have any idea. None of them have any idea that our weapons have funded the jihadists, and we've also funded both sides of the war. And that's been reported. In fact, we have a story later today. Also, same thing in Yemen. We're giving weapons and money to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is giving it to Sunni militias on the ground. Sunni militias include Al-Qaeda and jihadists. They should be getting angry at that, but they're not. Notice. In Morning Joe, the epicenter of establishment politics, they save their anger for those who bucked the dominant narrative in D.C. Their anger should be at the fucking policymakers, the neocon policymakers, who've been wrong every step of the way about every single war and are now trying to push us into a fucking another one. That's who they should be mad at, but instead they're mad at the one of few people who stuck their neck out and said, hey, maybe we shouldn't do regime change wars. maybe even if you say Assad's a bad guy, and even if you say Assad's a brutal dictator, not our place to do that. Not our place. And he's not an official enemy. He's not trying to attack Kentucky. What do you want me to tell you? Listen, when should we use U.S. military force? To defend the country from attack. That's when we should use it. Outside of that, you want to stop a genocide? Okay, the UN can get together and we could go at it, not unilaterally, but with everybody together. Because we're not supposed to be a nation above nations, we're a nation among nations. So that's the reasonable response. That's Tulsi's response, and they're apoplectic. Oh! We've been told this is the official baddie. Weird, isn't it strange how the idiots on Morning Joe never melt down over, oh, there's a genocide of the Rohingya Muslims. Quick, do regime change in Myanmar. Weird, why are they not doing that? Maybe it's because the elites in D.C., the neocons who are really controlling everything, they're not focusing on that. They don't want that to happen, so they don't care about a fucking, genocide of Rohingya. They don't care about a genocide in Sudan or the Congo. They don't care about any of that shit, which is why they're not talking about it. They do care about, we need to do regime change in Syria, so talk about how bad Assad is endlessly, and then if anybody bucks that narrative, smear them. It's amazing that this playbook, they go back to this playbook over and over and over and over and over. And get away with it. They get away with it. But guess what? Maybe the American people are catching on, because the American people agree with Tulsi. Tulsi's a non-interventionist. The American people agree with Tulsi. So if she keeps fighting back, it's going to be a hell of a thing to watch, because I'm telling you, just like the corporate Democrats are a house of cards because they don't really represent the policies that people want represented, corporate media is a house of cards. Nobody likes these people. Who the fuck likes these people? I'll tell you who likes them. DC elitists. That's where people watch Morning Joe. Sitting in, not just DC, New York too. The Wall Street assholes with their feet up, just snorted a couple lines, harassing their secretary. And they're like, yeah, Morning Joe, this is great. Fucking neocons, John Bolton sitting in his office watching this shit. Regular people are not like, we must topple Assad. No, regular people are like, bitch, lower my fucking medical bills. I'm about to go bankrupt. Sweet Jesus. Really is amazing. It really is stunning that every time they do it, smearing her for refusing to, harshly condemn a foreign leader on a fucking talk show. What do I want from my president? I would want a president who's willing to negotiate and compromise and make deals. I want a president who wants to work towards peace. I don't want a president who's going to be a fucking gunslinger who's like, yeah, you're evil, you're bad, you're evil. As we back fucking Saudi Arabia as they do a genocide. The hypocrisy is just overwhelming. The misplaced priorities are overwhelming, and they're all just puppets of the establishment and the deep state spewing the narrative that they want to be spread.